Welcome to the Flight Levels. Today, we're talking about the time that I nearly failed to take off at a high altitude airport and the single lazy attitude that nearly put us past the point of no return. Let's get to it. If you're enjoying this content, please hit that like button. It really helps me continue making great videos like this one, and also subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Years ago, I had a client who acquired a high-performance airplane. That was new to both of us, and I knew that unfamiliar airplanes can bring real risk. So before ever stepping into the cockpit, I spent some serious time with the POH learning all about the standard procedures, the emergency procedures, systems, and what performance I could expect in all phases of flight. This client already had his private pilot certificate. He also had a few hundred hours under his belt. He also had intentions of earning his instrument rating. So between this pilot's experience and my comfort level learning new systems, I felt the level of risk was acceptable. Our first 20 hours or so went great. I felt we both learned the new airplane well. I felt we were both able to fly this new airplane very proficiently. We then decided it would be fun to fly to Truckee, California for lunch one day. In the days leading up to the flight, we discussed the procedures for flying in and out of mountainous airports. We discussed the performance calculations and risk management for such a flight. The flight up to Truckee that day was great. We were blessed with great visibility and great rides. Plus, who doesn't love flying over Lake Tahoe? After lunch, we returned to the airplane and I observed my client perform the pre-flight checklist. We then discussed which runway Tower would likely assign us and the noise abatement procedure for that departure. We then loaded up and began the engine start and taxi checklists. On this particular day, we were assigned a taxi to runway 2. At the end of the taxiway, I observed my client hold the brakes and begin the before takeoff checklist. The purpose of today's video is not to go into detail about the procedures for leaning your engine for a takeoff at a high altitude airport in a normally aspirated engine. The main point is you need to lean the engine for its best performance since the density at high altitude is less than that at sea level. In a nutshell, the procedure goes something like this. You need to advance the throttle all the way forward, and then you're going to pull back the mixture lever until you get to the lean side of peak EGT, and then you advance the mixture lever forward until you ensure you're back on the rich side of peak EGT. When I observed my client do this step, I clearly saw him pull the mixture back to where he was lean of peak. I then saw him advance the mixture lever forward, but I remember thinking, I think he should push that lever forward a little bit further. Nah, it's probably fine. This is the exact moment where this entire situation was created. In aviation, probably fine is not a risk management strategy. After performing the rest of the checklist, we received our takeoff clearance. My client advanced the throttle lever all the way forward and we began our takeoff roll. With this plane having a constant speed propeller, there was no initial indication that anything was wrong. As we proceeded down the runway, I knew our performance would be worse than it was at sea level. However, as the runway rolled underneath us, I started to get that feeling that something was not right. I glanced at our airspeed indicator and I saw it was slowly rising. I also glanced at the end of the runway and saw that it was advancing very quickly. I announced to my client that the airplane was my controls. I began by applying pressure to the yoke to see how much force I could feel on the elevator. I was able to get the nose to respond, so I felt we were close to attaining takeoff speed. As we lifted off, I was able to get the aircraft into ground effect, but we weren't accelerating much. I retracted the gear as we passed the end of the runway. Luckily, runway 2 points you downstream on the Truckee River. though it was clear there was something wrong and I wouldn't have a lot of time to do something about it. Knowing power was an issue, I slowly advanced the mixture control, and you could suddenly feel the engine get a second wind at life. At this point, I felt we had enough airspeed to retract the flaps, and we were able to begin a normal climb. Let's step through what happened and what I hope you can learn from my experience. At the time of this event, I'd flown in and out of the Truckee airport dozens of times. I had also flown in Colorado for years, so I had confidence in my ability to safely instruct students in these conditions. I had also flown with this client in this airplane for several hours, so I had familiarity and comfort with both. When I was observing my client perform the before takeoff checklist, I ignored my observation that something might not be right. I also failed to use the 50-70 rule. If you're not already familiar, this is an easy way to ensure you're achieving enough takeoff performance on your roll. You want to ensure that at 50% down the runway, you have at least 70% of your rotation speed. For example, if rotation speed is 60 knots, then 70% is 42. So by taxiway Papa, which is roughly halfway down runway 2, we should have observed at least 42 knots indicated. If not, we would still have over 2,000 feet to bring the throttle back to idle and safely stop. Instead, I relied on my gut that we weren't accelerating as fast as we should have. By the time I took action, we were in a much worse spot with much fewer options. I was extremely lucky that the situation could be remedied with the mixture control lever. As you can see, properly leaning your mixture is extremely important for aircraft performance. The procedure will vary depending on the systems of your particular aircraft. Fixed pitch versus constant speed propeller are going to have different procedures. Turbocharged versus normally aspirated are also going to be different. So be sure to talk to your instructor about the best procedure for the exact aircraft you are flying. Even after leaning properly, please use the 50-70 rule to also ensure that you are achieving the performance needed to safely take off. Thank you for watching. Have you ever taken off from a high altitude airport? What tips do you have for leaning for takeoff? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and also please subscribe so you don't miss my next episode. Check out flight-levels.com, and remember, don't just fly, climb to the flight levels. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to see my video about how air traffic control landline communication works. You're gonna love it.